The Squirrel, a girl born in the desert. The story of a lonely girl. The night was not over yet. The breath of the desert was still alive. The sands were slowly returning to the sky, the heat they had absorbed all day, and an invisible shiver appeared in the air. And the sky was endless. The stars burned coldly, distantly, and indifferently in it. Within this expanse there was a small village. Houses with mud walls, silent, as if they had grown out of the earth itself. And among them, in a corner forgotten by people, water remained. This water was not really a lake. It was just the last breath of a dried up stream. But for a girl it was a whole world. She was laughing in the water. Her laughter was so pure, so innocent that even the wind did not dare to spoil it. Fatima, Fatima, look, I am a fish. The girl was spinning in the water, splashing the water with her hands and laughing. Fatima was sitting on the shore. Her black dress was pale in the sun, her hands were rough from work, and her face was calm from fatigue. She smiled at the girl. You are not a fish, you little fool, she said softly. You are a child with a heart. The girl shook her head. No, I am a fish. If I am not a fish, why do I like living in water? Fatima did not answer. She stared at the girl. But inside she was afraid. Because this girl loved water so much. As if the water was her real home. Come on, come out now, Fatima said after a while. The girl shook her head. No. It will be cold. No. You'll get sick. No. Fatima sighed deeply. If you don't come out, I'll leave. After these words, the girl suddenly fell silent. She froze in the water. Then she slowly turned around. Her eyes suddenly filled with fear. You're not leaving. This was not an ordinary question. It was the cry of a heart afraid of loneliness. Fatima smiled softly. No, I will not leave. The girl slowly emerged from the water. Her bare feet touched the sand. She trembled. Fatima took her in her arms. I am here, he said softly. The girl put her head on his chest. She heard this beating. It was a heartbeat. This heart was her world. The girl's name was Farida. But no one had said this name yet. She was not yet a name. She was still just a breath. She was still just a heart. Every day they came here. The sun rose. The wind blew. The sand lay still. And Farida laughed. Fatima, look. He was jumping into the water. Fatima, look. He was spinning in the water. Fatima, look. He was alive. And Fatima was watching him. She knew. She knew that these moments would not last forever. One day, Farida was playing in the water when she stopped. She suddenly became serious. Fatima. Yes. Where is my mother? The question was simple. But this question was a question that pierced the heart. Fatima remained silent. She knew the answer. But to give this answer was to shatter the girl's world. Your mother, she said slowly. Her voice trembled. Your mother loves you. Farida bowed her head. Then why isn't she here? Fatima closed her eyes. She couldn't answer. Because the truth was cruel. Her mother was dying. Slowly. Silent. Alone. That night the wind blew differently. There was silence inside the house. A heavy silence. Farida stood by the door. She looked inside. A woman was lying on the bed. Her face was pale. Her lips were colorless. And her eyes were looking far away. Farida slowly approached. Mother. The woman looked at the girl. Tears appeared in her eyes. Farida. That was the name. That was her name. That name, it woke her heart. Mother. The woman raised her hand. A trembling hand. Farida held her. The hand was cold. Very cold. Don't be afraid, the woman whispered. Farida didn't understand. Why? The woman didn't answer. She only looked at her daughter. She was looking for the last time. That night Farida didn't sleep. She was lying next to Fatima. Fatima. Yes, my child. Will my mother get better? Fatima didn't answer. Because there are no answers to some questions. There is only silence. And silence is the hardest answer. Farida closed her eyes. But her heart was awake. She felt something was changing. She felt something was ending. But she didn't know what it meant yet. Dawn broke. But this morning was not like the previous ones. The air was the same. The sand was the same. The sun was the same. Only Farida had changed. She was sitting in front of the door. Her legs were crossed, her chin resting on her knees. Her eyes were looking into the distance. But she couldn't see anything. And there were people inside the house. They were talking slowly. Very slowly. As if something would break if they spoke louder. Farida didn't understand what they were saying, but she could feel the weight in their voices. This weight was the weight of not returning. The door opened. Fatima came out. Her eyes were red. Farida stood up immediately. Fatima. Fatima didn't answer. She only looked at Farida. There was something in that look. Compassion. And helplessness. Farida felt her heart start to beat faster. Fatima, is mom sleeping? Fatima opened her lips. But no sound came out. Farida asked again, this time in a lower voice. Fatima, why isn't mom calling me? Fatima suddenly hugged Farida. Tightly. Very tightly. Farida felt her body shaking. And at that moment, she understood. Even as a child, she understood. Some departures are forever. The sun was so bright that day. It was unfair. How could the world be so bright when someone was gone? Farida was sitting in the yard. People were coming. People were going. They were stroking Farida's head. They were saying something. But none of these words reached Farida. She was thinking about only one thing. Who will hug me now? That night Farida thought about water again. Water never left. Water was always here. Water never left her. She slowly got up. She walked towards the door. Where are you going? Fatima's voice came from the darkness. Farida stopped. To the water. It's night now. Whatever. Fatima fell silent. Then she said. I'm going too. They walked together. The night was cold. But Farida didn't feel the cold. She reached the water. And looked at the water. The water was silent. As if nothing had changed. As if no one had left. Farida slowly entered the water. Cold. But this cold was alive. This cold, it hugged her. I am here, Farida whispered. I did not leave. Fatima stood on the shore and cried. Because she knew. This girl would never be an ordinary child again. Days passed. Farida began to speak less. But she looked more. She felt more. She thought more. She was growing up fast. Forced. One day her father came. The horse. Dust. And silence. Farida remembered him. This man is tall. This man is strong. This man is long. Her father dismounted. He looked at Farida. They stood looking at each other. Like two strangers. Her father slowly approached. Farida. The name was said again. But this time it sounded different. Heavier. Farida did not answer. Her father sank down. His eyes met Farida's. I am here. Farida asked slowly. For how long? Her father could not answer. Because the truth was heavy. He would never stay long. That night Farida did not sleep. She looked at the sky. The stars were cold. She whispered. Mother, where are you? No one answered. Only the wind blew. And Farida felt one truth at that moment. She was alone. But this loneliness does not break her. This loneliness creates her. She did not know it yet. One day, everyone will leave her. Again. And again. And again. But she will not break. Because a heart born in the desert is not afraid of loneliness. Some separations are felt in advance. Even if they have not happened yet, the heart knows them. Fatima was different that day. She did not speak as usual. She did not laugh as usual. She did not even take Farida to the water. Farida felt it immediately. Children feel. They may not understand the words, but they feel the change in the heart. Fatima, Farida said slowly. Fatima looked at her. There was something in that look. Farewell. Farida's heart sank. Why don't we go swimming today? Fatima didn't answer. She only stroked Farida's hair. Slowly. Carefully. As if it were the last time. Towards evening, strangers came to the house. They were men. They spoke to Fatima. Farida watched from afar. She didn't understand the words. But she heard the tremor in Fatima's voice. At one point, Fatima knelt down. She bowed her head. It was surrender. Farida's heart began to beat faster. Fatima. Fatima looked at her. There were tears in her eyes. But she didn't smile. It was the hardest smile. Farida, come here. Farida came closer. Fatima hugged her. Tightly. Very tightly. Farida couldn't breathe. Fatima, what happened? Fatima whispered. You are a strong girl. That was a strange thing to say. Farida didn't understand. I don't want to be strong. Fatima closed her eyes. A tear fell. But you have to be like this. The next morning was different. The weather was the same. The sun was the same. But her heart was different. Fatima was ready to leave. Farida understood this now. No. The word came out of Farida's mind. No. Fatima knelt down. Farida. No. Farida backed away. You can't leave. Fatima was crying. I have to. No. Farida screamed. This cry was heard in the desert. This cry was the cry of an abandoned heart. You can't leave me. Fatima tried to hug her. Farida resisted. No, I don't want to be alone. Fatima hugged her. Farida was beating her chest. I'll be a good boy. I won't play. Just don't go. Fatima was crying. It's not your fault. Then why? Fatima couldn't answer. Because the truth was cruel. Some people want to stay. But fate doesn't allow it. Fatima left. Simple. Silent. Looking back. And Farida ran. Fatima. She ran barefoot on the sand. Fatima. Tears blocked her vision. Go back. But Fatima didn't stop. She only moved away. And became smaller. And disappeared. Farida froze. The world was silent. The wind was silent too. The sun was cold too. Farida slowly sat down on the ground. Something inside her broke. It didn't make a sound. But this break was eternal. That night Farida went to the water. Alone. She looked at the water. The water was the same. As if nothing had changed. Farida slowly entered the water. Cold. Very cold. But she did not come out. She stood in the water. She whispered. Now you are here. This water was now Fatima. This water was now a mother. This water was now the world. That night Farida died. And another Farida was born. This new Farida. No longer trusts anyone completely. No longer depends on anyone completely. No longer afraid of leaving. Because she has experienced the hardest thing. Abandonment. Years pass. She loves again. She trusts again. And breaks again. But that's another story. And now. A little girl stood in the desert. Alone. But not broken. Because some hearts are created in solitude. Part 2. Iron walls and a wild heart. The smell of the sea itself was different. This smell was different from the desert. The smell of the desert was hot, dry, and silent. And this smell was alive. Wet. Moving. And foreign. Farida stood on the edge of the ship. Her hands were gripping the cold iron railing. Her eyes were fixed far away, at the point where the water and the sky met. She was silent. Hussein stood beside her. A big, strong man, but at this moment he seemed helpless. She opened her mouth several times. But she didn't know what to say. Finally, she said in a low voice. Isn't it cold? Farida shook her head. No. That was a lie. But this cold wasn't on her body. This cold was inside. Istanbul slowly began to appear. Towers. Roofs. People. Life. Farida watched. This city was not waiting for her. This city did not know her. And Farida did not know this city either. Are we staying here? She asked. Hussein was silent for a moment. Yes. You too. Hussein did not answer. This silence was enough. Farida looked at the sea again. She understood. Another separation was near. The school building was cold. This cold came from the stones. This cold came from the walls. This cold came from the order. The door opened. Inside stood a woman dressed in black. Her face was hard. And her eyes seemed to see everything. Is this Farida? Her father nodded. Farida looked at her father. He said nothing. Her father said nothing either. Some goodbyes are wordless. Her father knelt down. He cupped Farida's face. Be strong. That word again. Farida hated that word. She didn't want to be strong. She just didn't want to be alone. Her father stood up. And left. Simple. Silent. Not looking back. Farida froze. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She just stood there. And something else closed inside her. Eternal. My name is Madame Marie, the woman in black said. She leaned down. She looked into Farida's eyes. You are safe here. Farida laughed inwardly. Safe. The word no longer meant anything. The first night was the longest night. A new room. A new smell. A new silence. Farida lay in bed. Stranger breaths all around her. Stranger girls. Stranger life. She closed her eyes. And remembered the desert. She remembered water. She remembered Fatima. Tears came to her eyes. She wiped them away immediately. No one should see. Weakness was dangerous. The next day the bell rang. It was not an ordinary sound. It was an order. It was order. It was the end of freedom. All of you line up, said a cold voice. The girls lined up. Farida too. But something inside her resisted. It wasn't her body. It was her heart. Are you the new girl? A girl looked at her. Her eyes were full of curiosity. Farida nodded. What's your name? Farida. The girl smiled. I'm Maria. Farida said nothing. Friendship was dangerous. Friendship meant loss. The lesson began. The teacher was speaking. The words were flying in the air. But Farida was not listening. She was looking out the window. There was a tree outside. Its branches were free. They did not obey the walls. Farida's heart began to beat fast. She saw freedom. And suddenly she made a decision. It was recess time. The girls went out into the yard. Farida approached the tree. She put her hand on the bark. It was alive. It was real. She looked up. And started to climb. Stop. Someone shouted. Farida did not stop. Dream. Farida continued. She climbed up. Into the branches. The air there was different. There she was herself again. The girls were watching from below. He's crazy. He'll fall. He'll be punished. Farida laughed. This laughter was the laughter of freedom. The teacher came running. I said a dream. Farida was sitting on top. And for the first time within these walls. She felt alive. The teacher shook her head. And said softly. You are a bird. She stopped. Then she said. Choliqushi. The girls laughed. But Farida didn't laugh. She repeated the word to herself. Choliqushi. It was a name. It was freedom. This was her new birth. From that day on, Farida disappeared. And Choliqushi was born. With a heart that couldn't fit in a wall. With an unbroken spirit. And yet unaware of the pain that awaited her ahead. Part 2 continued. Iron walls and a wild heart. Some cages are not made of iron. They are made of order. They are made of silence. They are made of invisible walls that say, this is how it should be done. Farida learned this quickly. Everything was set here. When to stand. When to walk. When to speak. When to be silent. And worst of all, when not to feel. Morning. The bell rang. Farida opened her eyes. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then she remembered. And her heart went cold again. The girls around her were standing. They were used to it. And Farida was not there yet. Faster, said the girl next to her. Farida looked at her. It was Maria. If you are late, you will be punished. Farida asked in a cold voice. Why? Maria was surprised. Because it is like this here. Farida thought to herself. That is not a good enough reason. But she did not say anything. For now. Breakfast passed in silence. The sound of spoons. The sound of breathing. And no laughter. Farida hated this silence. Silence reminded her of loneliness. The days began to pass. Farida watched. She learned. And learned to resist. She put herself up against the walls. She did not obey the rules. She did not keep quiet. Because if she kept quiet, she would die inside. One day the teacher called her. Farida. Farida looked at her. Why do you always disobey the rules? Farida didn't answer. Why? Farida said slowly. Because I'm not a tree. The teacher didn't understand. What? Farida looked into her eyes and said. Trees don't move, I move. This answer silenced the teacher. Because this girl was no ordinary girl. This girl was hard to break. But the nights. The nights were different. The nights were a time of weakness. Farida lay in bed. Her eyes were open. Looking into the darkness. And remembering. The water. Fatima. Her mother. And the worst thing. That they wouldn't come back. She slowly pressed her face into the pillow. And she cried silently. Because Choliqushi also cried sometimes. But no one saw. One day it rained. Drops hit the window. This sound reminded Farida of the desert. She approached the window. She put her hand on the glass. Cold. But alive. Are you leaving too? She whispered. This question was not for the rain. This question was for everyone. Why do you always stand alone? Farida turned around. It was Maria. Because people leave. Maria fell silent. She hadn't expected that answer. I'm not leaving, she said slowly. Farida looked at him. She wanted to believe it. But she knew. Everyone would leave. Eventually. One day the director saw Farida in the tree again. It's almost noon. Farida looked down. Why? The director's face was stern. Because it's impossible. Farida asked. Who said that? The director didn't answer. Because this question was dangerous. This question would challenge the order. Farida said slowly. If the birds can do it, so can I. The director suddenly understood. This girl can be kept in a cage. But not her soul. That night the principal said to another teacher. This girl is different. How different? The principal looked out the window. She is not broken. It was a simple word. But it was true. Farida was not broken. Still. Years passed. Farida grew up. But the Choliqushi inside her did not change. She still wanted freedom. She still looked at the sky. She still remembered those who were gone. And she still did not trust anyone completely. Because she had learned one thing. Love is beautiful. But love is dangerous. But one day, everything changes. Because fate brings another person into her path. This person awakens her heart. And breaks again. His name is Cameron. Part 3. The Awakening of the Heart. Some meetings are not accidental. They begin years ago, when a person does not yet know who he is. For Farida, this meeting was already written. She was just waiting for the right time. Summer had come. She was left behind the walls of the school. The iron discipline, the cold looks, the forced silence, these were left behind. But Farida had changed. She was no longer a child. She was now Choliqushi. And Choliqushi could never return to ordinary life. The garden was old. The trees were tall. The wind was familiar. But Farida felt like a stranger. She stopped at the gate. Voices were coming from inside. Laughter. Simple, innocent laughter. This laughter squeezed her heart. Because she had moved away from this laughter. Farida. She turned. Aunt Basima. Tears in her eyes. How much you have grown. Farida did not smile. She had forgotten how to do it. Aunt Basima hugged her. Farida did not move. She was not used to hugging. Cameron is here too, said the aunt. The name hung in the air. Farida's heart suddenly began to beat faster. Why? She did not know herself. The garden was deep. The shadow of the tree was long. And there. He stood. Cameron. She turned and looked. And their eyes met. It was not an ordinary look. It was a recognition. It was a memory. This was the beginning. Cameron said softly. Farida. His voice was quiet. But there was power in that quiet. Farida didn't answer. He just looked. Cameron had changed. He was taller. His shoulders were wider. But his eyes were the same. Calm. And dangerous. Do you still climb trees? He asked. Farida answered. If the trees were still tall. Cameron smiled. This smile troubled Farida's heart. This smile, it meant that he was seeing her. The real her. The tired one. You have changed, said Cameron. Farida asked coldly. For the worse. Cameron shook his head. No. He was silent for a moment. Then he said. Stronger. Farida hated that word. But this time the word sounded different. The days passed. They met often. They talked. They were silent. And sometimes they were just together. And that was the most dangerous thing. Because intimacy meant the risk of loss. One day Cameron asked. Why are you always ready to run away? Farida was surprised. I'm not running away. Cameron looked into her eyes. You will never be whole. It was true. Farida could not deny it. Because everyone leaves, he finally said. Cameron asked quietly. Me too. Farida did not answer. Because she did not know the answer. And it scared her. The wind blew. The leaves of the trees rustled. The world was silent. And in that silence, Farida felt for the first time. It was new. It was dangerous. It was alive. It was love. But Choliqushi did not know yet. Love is just the beginning. Pain is its shadow. One evening. Cameron said. You can never live in a cage. Farida asked. How do you know? Cameron replied. Because you were not made for a cage. Farida's heart began to beat faster. Because for the first time. Someone understood her. But understanding was also dangerous. Because a heart that was understood was an open heart. And an open heart could break. That night Farida looked up at the sky. The stars were cold again. But this time. She was not alone. Part 3 continued. The Awakening of the Heart. Sometimes a person does not notice when his heart has changed. It happens slowly. Just as the wind slowly moves the leaves of a tree, so the heart changes. Farida realized it too late. But when she did, there was no turning back. The dawn had not yet fully dawned. The garden was silent. The world was silent. Farida walked barefoot among the trees. The damp earth was cold under her feet. But this cold was pleasant. This cold made her feel alive. You're running away again. The voice came from behind. Farida stopped. She didn't turn around. I'm not running away, she said. Then why do you always walk alone? Now she turned. Cameron. He was standing in the shade of a tree. His eyes were fixed on Farida. This look was not ordinary. This look was a look seeking an answer. Because solitude is safe, said Farida. Cameron slowly approached. Solitude is not safe. Farida laughed coldly. You haven't lost yet. The word cut through the air. Cameron stopped. I've lost too. Farida shook her head. No, you still believe. It was an accusation. And it was true. Cameron said softly. And you don't trust anyone. Farida didn't answer. Because it was true too. They stood silent. Only the wind spoke. Only hearts beat. You're afraid. Cameron finally said. Farida suddenly became angry. I'm not afraid of anything. Lie. The word was like a knife. You're afraid of losing. Farida looked away. The blow was clear. Because it was true. Everything will pass, she said slowly. Her voice trembled. My mother is gone. Silence. Fatima is gone. Silence. My father is gone. The silence grew heavy. Farida continued. Everything will pass. This was a confession. This was the truth of a wounded heart. Cameron said very slowly. I will not leave. Farida looked at her. These words were dangerous. Because these words were hope. And hope was the most dangerous thing. Don't say that, Farida said. Why? Because it could be a lie. Cameron shook his head. It's not a lie. Farida's heart began to beat faster. You can't know that. Cameron took a step closer. I know. They were standing very close. Farida felt his breath. It was new. It was scary. It was alive. Why me? Farida whispered. This question, the weakest question. Cameron answered. Because you are different. Farida laughed. A bitter laugh. Different people are left alone. Cameron shook his head. Different people change the world. Farida's heart changed again. Slowly. But forever. That evening, Farida sat alone. Her hands were shaking. She was angry with herself. Why? Why did these words affect her? Why did this look make her weak? She was Choliqushi. Choliqushi belonged to no one. Choliqushi was free. But freedom sometimes meant loneliness. She looked up at the sky. Will I try again? This question was unanswered. Because the future was silent. The next day, Cameron found her again. You are running away from me. Farida shook her head. No. Then why are you running away from me? Farida did not answer. Because the truth was simple. She was afraid. Cameron said slowly. I won't force you. Farida looked at him. Then why are you coming? Cameron replied. Because my heart is coming. These words were simple. But they opened Farida's heart. Slowly. Carefully. And this was the beginning. For the first time, Choliqushi was not afraid of the cage. Because it was not a cage. It was a choice. And choice was another form of freedom. But fate had not yet fully revealed its cards. There was still pain. There was still separation. There was still a test. Because love is only the beginning. And Choliqushi's true flight was still ahead. Part 3, Final. The awakening of the heart. Some feelings, when they come, a person cannot name them. They are neither joy neither fear, nor pain. But they have all of this inside them. Now Farida woke up every day with this feeling. And every day she tried to escape from it. But you can't escape from the heart. It was evening. The sun was setting. The garden was turning golden. Farida was sitting alone. But she knew she wasn't alone. She could feel it. You're thinking again. Cameron. Quiet as always. Close as always. Farida didn't look at him. I'm always thinking. Cameron sat next to her. A silence fell between them. But this silence wasn't heavy. This silence was alive. You're afraid of being happy, said Cameron. Farida suddenly looked at her. Happiness is temporary. Cameron shook his head. Maybe. He was silent for a moment. But that doesn't make it any less real. Farida's heart sank. Because she wanted to believe these words. But she was afraid. What if you leave too? The question finally came out. This question was her greatest fear. Cameron didn't answer right away. She looked at Farida. Deep. Real. Then you'll live anyway. Farida was surprised. She hadn't expected this answer. You're strong, Farida. That word again. But this time, the word wasn't heavy. The word was trust. Cameron continued slowly. Not because you need me. He stopped. You must love me because you want me. These words opened Farida's heart. Because this was not an attachment. It was a choice. Free choice. The wind blew. Farida closed her eyes. She felt. Her heart was no longer a cage. Her heart was now alive. I am afraid, she finally said. It was a confession. It was weakness. But it was true. Cameron said slowly. Me too. This answer surprised Farida. You too. Cameron nodded. Because it is true. In this moment. No one spoke. No one moved. But everything changed. For the first time. Farida did not feel alone. But life is not a fairy tale. And fairy tales don't last forever. A few days later, a letter arrived. A simple letter. A simple piece of paper. But inside it was a disaster. Farida opened it. She read it. And her face turned pale. Cameron had to go somewhere far away. His studies. His future. His life. It was somewhere else. Farida was silent. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just remained silent. Because she knew this feeling. This feeling was leaving. When? She asked finally. Soon, said Cameron. Silence. For how long? Cameron didn't answer. That answer was enough. That night Farida was alone. She looked at the sky. The stars were the same. But now they were colder. She whispered. I'm alone again. But this time. This loneliness was different. Because this time she felt pain even before losing something. The last day before Cameron left. They were standing in the garden again. No one spoke. Words were superfluous. Will you come back? Farida finally asked. Cameron looked at her. And said. If you wait. It was a question. It was not a promise. It was a choice. Farida did not answer. Because she did not know yet. Waiting was love. But waiting was also pain. Cameron left. Simple. Silent. And again. Farida was left alone. But this time. Her heart did not break. Because she now knew. Love can leave. But love changes. Part 4. Separation and strengthening. Separation happens in an instant. But its echo lasts for years. The morning Cameron left was an ordinary morning. The sun came out. The wind blew. The world did not change. Only the world inside Farida was destroyed. The gate closed. It was a simple sound. The sound of iron hitting wood. But this sound was the end for Farida. She stood there. Not moving. Not breathing. Not feeling. As if a part of her had gone with Cameron. Farida. Aunt Basema's voice came from afar. Farida didn't turn around. My child. A hand touched her shoulder. Farida slowly removed the hand. It was gentle. But firm. I'm fine. It was a lie. But it was necessary. After that day, Farida changed. She learned to laugh again. But this laugh was different. This laugh was a shield. This laughter was a hidden pain. She climbed the trees again. But not for freedom anymore. To escape. To escape her heart. To escape her memories. To escape her hope. One day she climbed to the highest branch. The wind was strong. The tree was shaking. The ground below was far away. Farida looked down. For a moment. She thought about letting go. Just letting go. For the pain to end. For the loneliness to end. For the waiting to end. But she didn't let go. Because there was still life inside her. I'm not finished yet, she whispered. It was a decision. It was a birth. The days began to pass. Farida now looked differently. At the world. At people. To herself. She was no longer waiting. She was no longer hoping. She was now living. Just living. One day a letter arrived. Farida held it for a long time. She did not open it. Because some truths seem to not exist if they are not read. But in the end she opened it. It was from Cameron. Simple words. Simple sentences. But there was longing in them. Farida closed the letter. She closed her eyes. And did not open it again. Because she understood. She was no longer the girl who was waiting. She was now a woman who had chosen her own path. You have changed, Aunt Basima said one day. Farida smiled. Yes. Is this a good change? Farida thought for a moment. This is a necessary change. It was night. Farida looked up at the sky again. The stars were there. But they were no longer cold. Because she was no longer afraid of loneliness. Loneliness was no longer her enemy. This was his strength. I am Choliqushi, he said slowly. This name was no longer a nickname. This was his identity. This was his soul. He understood now. Love did not break him. Love created him. Separation did not destroy him. Separation made him strong. Loneliness did not kill him. Loneliness gave him wings. And now, he was ready to fly. Part 5. The true flight of the Choliqushi. Some flights do not begin in the sky. They begin within the heart. Invisible. Silent. But irreversible. When Farida woke up that morning, everything was ordinary. The same room. The same window. The same world. But something inside her had completely changed. She was no longer waiting. She was now living. She went to the window. The wind was gently stirring the curtain. This wind was familiar to her. This wind was freedom. She closed her eyes. She took a deep breath. And for the first time, she breathed without pain. Farida. She turned. Aunt Basima was standing at the door. Her eyes were filled with kindness. And worry. You look good. Farida smiled slowly. This smile was genuine. I am fine. This time it was not a lie. What are you going to do now? Asked the aunt. The question was simple. But there was a future inside it. Farida thought for a moment. She had been afraid of such questions before. Because the future was unknown. But now, the unknown didn't scare her. It called her. I will live, she said finally. It was a simple answer. But it was a decision. The days began to pass. Farida lived differently now. She no longer hid herself. She no longer ran away. She was no longer afraid. Because she had experienced the worst. Loss. And she had survived. One day she went to an old tree. That tree. Those branches. That sky. She put her hand on the bark. I have returned, she said slowly. This tree was a witness to her. To her childhood. To her pain. To her growth. She climbed the tree. Slowly. With confidence. Each branch took her up. And finally, she reached the highest point. The wind was strong there. But this wind did not knock her down. This wind lifted her up. She looked down. The earth was far away. But this time, she was not afraid. Because she had learned to fly, not fall. I am no longer alone, she said. Because she had found herself. And when a person finds herself, she is never alone. The sun was setting. The sky was turning golden. Farida closed her eyes. And she heard a voice inside her. It was Fatima's voice. It was her mother's voice. It was her own voice. You are strong. This time she did not hate the word. Because it was true. She went down. But this was no longer a fall. This was the beginning of a new path. Farida looked up at the sky for the last time. I am ready. For this world. For this life. For this pain. For this love. For everything. Because she was no longer an ordinary girl. She was no longer a lost child. She was no longer a waiting heart. She was now Choliqushi. And Choliqushi will never live in a cage. Final conclusion. Some people find love. Some people find happiness. But some people find themselves. And this is the greatest victory. Farida lost. She cried. She broke. But she got up again. And flew. Because true strength is not in not falling. True strength is in getting up again every time.